The Man Who Woke Up in the Future, The Strange Case of Rudolph Fentz. A Man Out of Time. New York City has seen its fair share of mysteries, but none quite like this. On a warm June evening in 1950, Times Square was alive with its usual chaos: neon signs flickering, taxis honking, people rushing through the streets. But in the midst of it all, one man stood frozen, his eyes wide with terror. He was not from this world, or at least, not from this time. He wore a black waistcoat, a top hat, and boots that hadn't been in fashion for decades. His mustache and sideburns framed his face in a way that seemed eerily outdated. He turned his head wildly, staring at the towering skyscrapers, the flashing advertisements, the strange metal machine speeding past him. And then, in a moment of sheer panic, he stepped into traffic. A taxi struck him at full speed. His body hit the pavement. And just like that, the mystery deepened. Because when investigators searched his pockets, they found impossible clues, items that should not have existed in 1950, and impossible to discover. Authorities expected to find a wallet, maybe an ID. Instead, what they found was beyond explanation. A copper beer token from a saloon that had closed down nearly a century earlier. A bill for the care of a horse and carriage, issued by a stable that had been out of business for decades. Banknotes from the 1870s, crisp and unworn. A business card reading Rudolph Fentz, listing an address that no longer existed. A letter, postmarked June 1876, the ink still fresh. Even the stitching on his clothes was done in a style that hadn't been used for over 70 years. His fingerprints weren't in any modern records. No missing persons reports match his description. It was as though he had never existed in the 20th century. But then, an officer decided to look deeper, searching through police archives from New York's past. What he found was chilling. The vanishing of Rudolph Fentz to 74 years earlier, buried in old police files from 1876, was a case identical to this one. A 29-year-old man named Rudolph Fentz had vanished one summer evening after going out for a short walk. He had left his home after dinner, promising his wife he would return soon, but he never did. A citywide search was conducted. No one saw him leave. There was no crime, no struggle, no body. It was as if he had disappeared into thin air. His family waited for years, hoping for his return. But eventually, his name faded into history. Until 1950, until his body was found in Times Square. Did he step through time? The evidence left authorities with a question no one could answer. How could a man who disappeared in 1876 suddenly reappear 74 years later unchanged, wearing the same clothes, carrying fresh items from the past? Some believed he had somehow traveled through time, as though he had unknowingly stepped into a rift in reality, only to land in the future world he did not understand, where he met his tragic fate before he could speak. Others suspected a government experiment gone wrong, a secret test involving time travel, where Fentz was an unwilling participant. Did he escape? Was he sent forward by accident? Then there were the skeptics, those who claimed it was all just an urban legend. But if it was a hoax, how did official records from 1876 and 1950 perfectly match? And if it was just a story, then why did no one have an explanation for the real body buried under the name Rudolph Fentz? A mystery that defies time. The case of Rudolph Fentz remains one of the most chilling, unsolved mysteries in history. His body was buried, his belongings were locked away, and the story quietly faded from public memory. But the question still lingers. Did Rudolph Fentz step through time? Or was he the first known traveler to prove that time is not as linear as we believe? If time travel is real, how many others have walked among us lost, alone, and completely out of place? The truth, we may never know. This is just one of many bizarre and unexplained cases throughout history. If you want to hear more real-life mysteries, time travel cases, and forgotten stories, don't forget to like this video to help others discover this story. Subscribe to Rise and Renew for more mind-blowing documentaries. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a mystery. Because the world is full of untold stories, and some of them may just change the way you see reality.